Back in 1966, when early space tracking networks and automated telescope systems started pointing sensitive optics to the deeper cosmos, observers noticed strange rhythmic expansions and contractions of certain celestial points. Mainstream science looked at the instruments and claimed it was an internal optical anomaly or physical pulsar signal. They call it dead matter fluctuating mechanically. But what they didn't understand in 1966, and what they still don't understand now, is that movement isn't an instrumentation glitch or passive cosmic decay. The Bible gave us the true manual thousands of years before 1966, what looked like a breathing, pulsing machine to the early observers was actually the living presence of the Ophanim. They were looking at right at a structure where the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, of the four living creatures, basically the living creatures, was actively driving the wheels. Now, I'm not going to copyright the actual footage they took from the telescope. I found a picture, I saved it from Google just to show you why many people have it out there. And I wanted to tell you the original source to tell you what the biblical thing is and what it is, what they don't even know. When an amateur astronomer pointed a telescope at a bright star and captured this exact geometric entity on camera, it completely shocked social media. Mainstream skeptics and fact checkers immediately rushed out to claim it was just a modern camera glitch. They said it was a bokeh effect, or light bouncing off a telescope's inner mirrors. They had to invent a technical excuse because modern science cannot explain how a supposedly dead star can move with such conscious, deliberate intent. They label it an optical artifact. But if you open up the Old Testament in Ezekiel 1, you see the exact design. A wheel intersecting a wheel with a piercing central hub. The camera didn't glitch. It accidentally peeked past the physical veil and caught a glimpse of the throne room guardians. NASA officially acknowledges that the public and pop culture call it the eye of God. But NASA's official scientific name for it is the Helix Nebula, cataloged as NGC 7293. It's its name by NASA. When secular scientists look at this eye and its surrounding rings, they use specific physical terms to describe what millions of believers see as a divine celestial entity. Here's what NASA says about the object. Number 1, the pupil of the eye. What NASA says, astronomers claim the bright central pupil is a white dwarf star. They described it as a dense, glowing, dead core left behind after a star similar to our sun ran out of fuel and collapsed. NASA claims this central core is dead and burnt out. But if you read Ezekiel Chapter 1 verse 20, it says the Spirit of life is directly inside the hub of the wheel. It isn't a dead core. It is the active, pulsing focal point of a living throne guardian. Number 2, the iris and the expanding rings. What NASA says. Mainstream space agencies state that the colorful rings forming the iris are actually a planetary nebula, a massive trillion-mile wide tunnel of expanding hot gases and cosmic dust that the star shed over thousands of years. NASA views these rings as chaotic, drifting debris. However, the geometric perfection of these concentric rings matches the divine blueprint of a wheel intersecting of a wheel. Ezekiel Chapter 1, verse 16. It is highly organized, heavenly design, not accidental gas blowing into a vacuum. Number 3. The comet-like features. The spot's eyes. When NASA's advance James Webb Space Telescope zoomed into the rings, they documented thousands of strange, dense structures they call commentary knots or pillars with extended tails tracing the circumference. What secular science labels as knots of gas lining the rings are visually identical to what the prophet saw thousands of years ago. Ezekiel Chapter 1, verse 18. As for their rims, they were high and awesome, and the rims of all four were full of eyes all around. NASA looks into deep space, sees the Helix Nebula, and calls it the Eye of God. Just because how it looks. But they think it's just a graveyard of dead gas and white dwarfs. They're missing the entire truth because they don't read the manual. The Bible tells us it isn't a dead graveyard. It's the living, breathing architecture of the Ophanim angels guarding the heavens. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 15. Now as I looked at the living creatures, behold, a wheel was on the earth beside each living creature with its four faces. Verse 16. The appearance of the wheels and their workings was like the color of beryl, and all four had the same likeness. The appearance of their workings was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. Verse 17, when they moved, they went toward any one of four directions. They did not turn aside when they went. Just wow. Verse 18, as for their rims, they were so high, they were awesome, and their rims were full of eyes all around the four of them. Verse 19, when the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Verse 20, whenever the Spirit wanted to go, they went, because there the Spirit went, and the wheels were lifted together with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. So he's trying to say all of these eyes are all around these rims, the wheel within wheel. Verse 21, when those went, these went. When those stood, these stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up together with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Verse 22, the likeness of the firmament above the heads of the living creatures was like the color of an awesome crystal stretched out over their heads. Wow. Verse 23, and under the firmament their wings spread out straight one toward another. Each one had two which covered one side, and each one had two which covered the other side of the body. Wow. Can't even imagine. Ezekiel Chapter 3, verse 13. I also heard the noise of the wings of the living creatures that touch one another, and the noise of the wheels beside them, and a great thunderous noise.